I think that he was.
Holy shit. Here we go, Cleveland. This is breaking news. We literally have found out 5 minutes ago that the Browns have a new GM. But before we get into any of that, I'm Bill Hebble, your host. I'm here along with my good friend and co-host, Michael Zappa.
What a loaded show we have tonight.
Oh, my goodness.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So before we get into all the craziness that we've just witnessed, literally 5 minutes ago, as I said, we want to give a little quick recap. We've been out of the game for a week. We skipped a week. We thought that maybe, and Michael, you said this, so I'm not taking any credit for it, but you thought that maybe our podcast
I'm not superstitious. Bill. I mean,
You're just
I might be a little stitious, but yeah, we thought if we take our own bye week, then maybe that would give the Browns a shot. I don't know if there was any bad mojo going on there that, since we started the pod, they were 0-12, but you know what? They were also 0-12 at one point last year when the best pod around was not in existence. So
true. I mean, they covered the spread.
So we're back.
They covered the spread.
Yeah. So we're back. We have a loaded show. Happy to be back. A lot has happened with taking. What a week to take off because we have a lot to talk about. So I guess we'll just get to it.
Yeah. Okay. So what was your biggest takeaway from last game? If anyone's been living under a rock, we lost 19-10 to the Los Angeles or the Carson, California Chargers.
Carson Chargers has a much better.
That has a nice name to it. I know.
Los Angeles Chargers.
I kind of like that for LA. Bump up the ticket prices and smaller stadium.
Yeah, exactly. This is a side note, but I saw a couple articles about with the development of the technology in the NFL about transitioning stadiums to smaller so that they can upsell because we talk about it week to week, tickets for Browns games, and that's not a true representation of all franchises, but tickets for Browns games are $6. So
yeah,
I saw a lot of the Cleveland media say how the 27,000 capacity stadium was like such an amazing atmosphere for an NFL game because literally you were sitting on top of the field, so there was not a bad. So it'll be interesting to see if anyone would do that because I would spend more money on a ticket. I think you would have to if you wanted to go to a game, but I just saw someone mention kind of in passing that they wonder if that'll ever transition back to smaller stadiums and then just jack the prices up. Is there any point of intersection where you have 30,000 instead of 60,000, but you get $75 on average per ticket as opposed to $55, right? So
right.
Anyway,
right. I don't know. I think that really
I
get that that gives a better experience, but I think that also shuts out a lot of people that because then you can't get the blue collar class guys coming in and buying tickets because all the rich people are going to get the season tickets, and I feel like if you're there has to be maybe like closer to 45 or 50, maybe if you want to reduce it by that, and eliminate some upper decks or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever happen unless the technology and how you can view it from your home like drastically increases to where they actually compete. But anyway, I heard that playing in that stadium, all the Browns media or all the local Cleveland media said it was a really cool experience and atmosphere. So
cool that the Browns couldn't hear their plays. So that was really cool.
Don't worry, Hugh Jackson is bringing that up with the NFL, so I'm sure that'll go really far. But my biggest takeaways from that game, obviously the glaring one is Josh Gordon. He was targeted 11 times, and I think it's not exaggerating to say that realistically, he probably could have had 200 yards in that game. In his first game back in 3 years, because there was at least 2 balls that he had a step or two on one of the best cornerbacks in the league.
That was the crazy thing.
And if Kizer would have been able to lead him, then it would have been 50-yard, touchdowns most likely. So there was 2 of those, and he was targeted 11 times, only caught 4. So that's like, 30%, 35%.
Right.
So if he catches 6 of those 11 balls or 7,
it's 150 yards.
He's easily, he's easily at 120. And I just couldn't believe. And when you step back, I was just talking about it today, and just think of what he's actually accomplished. I mean, I wish, whether he is he'll eventually end up angling away from the Browns and wants to play somewhere else. I wish him the best, because I'm going to continue to watch him whether he plays for the Browns or not, because he's like, I mean, from just a physicality standpoint, he's like a rare specimen that doesn't come along in sports very often. So just his size and speed, and so that was a big takeaway for me. That's obvious. That's probably the most obvious one. But what about you?
I just want to make a quick note on Josh Gordon. It kind of actually, other teams feel comfortable when they have a player like that, but as a Browns fan, it scares me just because I know that other teams are seeing this, and it kind of feels like he most likely in 2019 will not be on the Browns, just because of how things go with the Browns. But my biggest takeaway was just. It was just our defense. I mean, I know that Phillip Rivers can really sling the ball, but and this isn't really a big takeaway in comparison to the entire season, but when we play against wide receiver number ones, we just have so much trouble. I mean, we're worse in the NFL in giving up yards and yards per completion for any pass to a top wide receiver. And so I just think that pass defense really, especially on that 4th down catch that Keenan Allen caught, and some of those other plays where he just seemed to break loose and extend, and that just his 20-yard catch broke open the whole drive for the Chargers. So, I mean, that was my biggest takeaway, was just how poorly our secondary kind of looked they really only have Keenan Allen. I mean, I know Phillip Rivers makes weapons out of all his guys, but they really only have Keenan Allen as a huge playmaker, so that was discouraging to see that we did still let him just...
Yeah, and I think, again, I think some of it's, the eternal optimism that we have, but I still think you see a team out there that's A, fighting hard, and B, showing some progress. It might be very slight progress, but we were in that game.
Yeah.
And God, barring a couple boneheaded plays by Deshone Kizer, we were in that game, and it's so unfortunate, because I think he regret,
the thing is,
putting together another solid game. I don't know what his stat line ended up being, but just by watching, he was putting together another solid game. Then all of a sudden, the last 4 minutes, I was so disappointed, because it was that is the worst sequence of plays between when I think on 3rd and 15 he took a sack or something. He ran the ball, didn't throw it away. He was out of the pocket, could have just thrown it away or ran out of bounds, took a sack. Then
that was awful.
It was just oh my gosh, how do you have a stable game and then do that? But
yeah, I was listening to some, him and Hugh talk on the post-game press conferences, and Hugh made a really good point, kind of like you said, where, he was coming off a really good statistical individual performance. And, this game, he was playing really well. He was confident off of that. And I really just think, deep down, he just wants that W. And so he towards the end of the game, when it was in the 4th quarter, when it was in the red zone, he was going to be willing to wait in the pocket longer to try and make a play, or use his legs more often to try and make a play. And I just think that I think he said that on the interception, that guy just made Kizer said that guy made a good read, but it's like, oh, you threw in triple coverage. And on the
yeah, that's like the first interception that I've seen him throw this year, or that I remember, that I'm like, that is just such a bad decision. Like, even if you think you have the arm strength, there was no window. There was no window to throw into.
No.
Like, that best case scenario, that ball tipped away.
Yeah.
That had zero chance of getting caught.
Yeah.
By a Browns player.
Exactly.
So, anyway.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, so I do think that he definitely did regress right there. And then that fumble, I mean, he thought, I feel like at that point, I mean, that whole situation of the fumble was caused by the idiocracy of Corey Coleman, because he dropped the touchdown pass, and then he also got a holding call on Duke Johnson's run, and it's just like
Wait, he dropped a touchdown pass this week or last week?
This week, last week, the week before that.
It's all Corey Coleman's fault, basically.
It really is. He just needs to break his hands again, and we can be on with it. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to blame one player, but we were driving really well, and Duke had us at like the 2-yard line, and
one thing we also have to acknowledge, and I can't believe you haven't already, your boy.
David Njoku,
who had a great game. David Njoku had a phenomenal game. He actually looked like an NFL player for the first time. Like,
really did.
And caught, the majority of the balls that were thrown his way. So that was actually, I said this earlier in the week. At the time, I forgot about it now, but my biggest takeaway was how good he looked in Josh Gordon coming back, when you don't have to, and we talked about this before he came back. It doesn't only help the matchup, Josh Gordon versus whoever, it shifts everyone down a defender.
Exactly.
Right? So like now instead of Rashard Higgins getting the best corner on the other team, or Ricardo Lewis, or God forbid Kenny Britt getting the best corner, clearly those guys aren't going to win those matchups. Yeah, or Bryce Tregg. But now you shift everyone down, and Corey Coleman comes back. He's the number 2. So now Rashard Higgins is up against maybe the fourth best corner on the team.
Yeah.
Or
a linebacker
those are
or
matchups
something.
And those are matchups that I think those guys can start to win. So that's exciting. So
yeah, it is exciting. And it makes you excited to think about, like, what if the Browns get like Calvin Ridley in the draft, because then you've got Gordon, Calvin Ridley, then Corey Coleman is your like third slot guy, and then you're bringing, so it can really, having that number, and that's why it's so hard to really, really judge how Kizer has grown this first year, is because literally this week was the first week that he had a top level talent NFL wide receiver.
Right.
And it's like before Corey Coleman's return, he was playing with, no offense to anyone, but a bunch of like kind of practice squad scrubs. Other than, I think we took Lewis in like a draft a couple years ago, but
fourth round. It's not exactly world beating. Yeah. So no, I agree. It'll be interesting to see. There is still 4 games left, so we can still win 4 of the last 8.
4 of the last 8,
still
baby.
Not hope there. 4 of the last 8. So my prediction, I have to pick the Browns to win. I don't even know if I want to.
You really have to. What are the
for the next 4 weeks?
What do you think the odds are that the Browns win 4 of the last 8? I wonder what those odds are. They're like minus 50,000.
Yeah, they had to be bad. But again, I saw, to sum it up from the last game, I saw a game that was winnable, and we just, we just couldn't put it all together when we needed to. So, And that's why I don't think that any of these last 4 games. I mean, you can argue that the Chargers are the hottest team in the NFL, at least one of the top 5 hottest teams in the NFL, and we gave them pretty much all they could handle. And if we had a competent offense, probably could have won that game. Because, I mean, the defense held, I think, 4 or 5 red zone trips to field goals. So,
yeah.
Anyway, that's why, like I've been saying the second half of the season, there's no one really, the Jaguars, we kept them pretty close. There hasn't been really a game that has gotten terribly out of hand because we can hang in there. We just got to be able to throw the last punch. So we'll see.
Right.
Do you think this might be the week?
Do you think like this 0-12 season so far has anything to do with the fact that Tank Carter hasn't been able to play this year?
Tank Carter's on the team.
Yeah. I think he tore his ACL in the preseason. He's been out the whole year.
Big Tank. That's how I know. You would have said Big Tank. I would have known exactly who you're talking about.
Did you know that? I didn't realize this when I was watching the game, but the Chargers did not punt until late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. I heard that also, and I was like, "That's unbelievable."
This is my goal for the Browns defense against the Packers. The Browns have not, the past 2 games, the other team has not punted in the first half. That is my goal for the Browns defense, is to force a punt at least in the first half.
You heard it here first. Wow. That's a lofty goal.
Tough goal. Especially for it's just that pass defense. Every time there's like the, 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 8, it's like, bad. So bad. Especially against, that's when teams use wide receiver number 1s or tight ends, and that's what the Browns are literally league worst at. So,
yeah. Well, not now. Not now that we have David Njoku breaking out of his shell.
Right.
Obviously. So let's, before we preview this week's game, let's just talk about all the activity that happened today. So first, I don't know if anyone on the pod has heard, but early this morning, it's Thursday, the 7th of December, and this morning the Browns fired their GM or president or executive vice president,
I don't really
personnel,
know
whatever his title
ended up being.
Sashi Brown had final say on all personnel moves and pretty much everything, and they fired him this morning. So what were your initial takes away before the news came tonight? Your initial takeaways of Sashi's job the last, 18 months, and then I'll go.
Yeah, initially when I first heard the news today, I was shocked. I was shocked that they would make. Initially, when I first heard it, I was shocked that they would make a move like that at the end of this season. But hearing Haslam's reasons and hearing what the new GM has been talking about is they have been interviewing for a new GM for over a month now. So there was probably no surprise to some higher ups in the Cleveland Browns organization that this was coming. And I think there was a lot of emphasis on drafting and, so to go back to Sashi here, his draft picks, he obviously had some say when he was first hired in 2013, but he didn't become the GM to make the final decisions until, I believe, 2016. Was technically his, I'm not done with my answer yet, but I just want to ask, was technically the 2016 draft his first draft?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I think so, because before then, I think he was more on the legal side of the Browns organization. I don't think that he was
right, so that's what
actually part of any personnel decision.
Yeah, so to go back to, his complete history, he was a lawyer. Wikipedia still lists his occupation as an attorney. He got hired by the Jags in 2005 to be on a legal counsel for them. And then the Browns, I don't know, like, he must interview. Maybe I should set up an interview with him because he must interview very well if the Browns all of a sudden were like, you know what? Let's just hire this, lifetime lawyer to be our executive president of player operations. And, then all of a sudden they bring on DePodesta as well. And, Sashi is in a driver's seat. And, the 26, I'm pulling it up right now just so I can get a clear image of what his first draft looked like. But, this was a draft, I believe that this was a draft when they traded back. They could have had Wentz. So, that just hits you so hard, especially when, like, and I mean, he's admitted it, that was a complete and utter just miscalculation on what they thought he was going to be as quarterback.
Yeah, misevaluation of talent for sure.
And then you look at their first pick in that draft after they traded that away was Corey Coleman. Now, after all the things that the Browns have gone through and all the holes that their team needed to fill at that time, like, was the number one pick that they needed to make a freaking wide receiver? I mean,
well, if you remember, I believe they traded down twice in that draft.
Yes.
I think they traded back to like 8 or 9, and then they traded from, and that was with the Titans maybe. And then they traded back from Titans back to 15. So
right.
So anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So I mean, I'm just kind of going through his draft picks here. As the official GM, his next two picks are great. He got Agba and Carl Nassib. Then he got Sean Coleman, who's been great. Now, here's the worst part about him and the new GM is that these are the two guys that have picked Cody Kessler and Kevin Hogan. So just let that sink in.
However,
he chose Aaron Rodgers.
One did not make the final roster.
True.
He was cut before the final 53-man roster, and one is still on the team 2 years later.
True.
So I think that kind of changes. But I don't want to get too far into the new hire before we talk about Sashi.
So
we finish talking about Sashi.
Actually, his draft picks blow my mind. He did a really good job drafting. He's got Agba, Nassib, like I said, Sean Coleman, Cody Kessler, Joe Schobert, who's like third in the entire NFL in tackles this year, Carter Lewis, Derek Kindred, Seth DeValve. I mean, those are, Spencer Drango, Rashard Higgins, literally like the entire, like most of the line, of this year.
I'm looking at the same list from his 2016 draft, and basically this tells me two things. He can't evaluate receivers at all.
No,
because he drafted 4 receivers that round or that year, and
DeValve is the only one that works out.
Yeah, and number 2, he can't evaluate quarterbacks, but everyone else are pretty decent, okay players. Like, I think they'll end up being average players in the NFL, like second contract guys. So I don't think you can kill him. Now, have his high round picks been suspect? Yeah. And like his passing on the quarterbacks? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the same list from his 2 drafts, and you start to see some of these guys, and you're like,
he has a great defensive mind. I feel like he has a really great defensive mind.
Yes. So of 24 players, if they typically say 50-50, right? So your draft is always going to be, if you can hit on 50% of your draft picks and they end up being second contract guys, then you're doing really well. And I'm looking at this list of 24 guys, and I think easily there's 15 guys here of the 24 that's way better than 50%. That will get second contracts. Like, you're looking at Myles Garrett, and this is 2017. Myles Garrett, Jabril Peppers, David Njoku, Kizer, Larry Ogunjobi, Howard Wilson, who we haven't seen, Roderick Johnson, who I think is hurt, Caleb Brantley, who's shown some signs, Zane Gonzalez, who should have been cut 7 weeks ago, and Matt Days, who I wish Matt Days would get more playing time. He was a 7th round pick. So I thought that once the news broke earlier this morning, I looked at his drafting. I was like, I don't know if we look at that because, we didn't have any other players. You look at that and you're like, wow, 20 of those 24 picks are starters for the Browns right now, or at least rotational players.
Right.
But I don't know if that's a testament to how talented they actually are, or if that's just because we don't have anyone else on the team to play that position.
It may be more of the latter, but
yeah. So it's tough to judge on there, but I would say, at least 8 of those guys, I think, stand to be.
I would say you give them a solid B for the 2016 and 2017 drafts. I mean, the 2017 draft, I feel like, Myles Garrett was a no-brainer.
Right.
And Njoku, earlier in the season he was shaky, but now he's starting to really blossom.
And they say tight end is the hardest transition to make. Other than quarterback, it's like one of the hardest transitions to make. So yeah, I mean, I don't think he's been terrible at drafting other than the misses. And it's easy in hindsight to go back and look at all the players you missed on.
Yeah.
But in the moment, there wasn't one person saying Carson Wentz is going to be as good as maybe the Eagles were saying it. Yeah. But I think we've talked about, I think it says more, that trade says more about how sharp and how much the Eagles organization believed in then Carson Wentz than it does about, because you can't fault the logic. I mean, the Browns were terrible, and they wanted to build a sustainable, base. So what makes sense? So, I can't fault him for that.
No, not at all.
No one knew Carson Wentz was going to be as good as quickly as he was. So, but anyway, my just initial reaction was, first of all, I love the fact that how much the national media love beating up on the Cleveland Browns. They salivate when they hear some juicy Browns news because they just, this morning, everyone was destroying the Cleveland Browns. And I was to the point where I was like, you know what? They say there's 2 guarantees in life, death and taxes or whatever.
Yeah.
Add a third, and that is the fact that the national media will always love, until we start winning, will love just crucifying the Cleveland Browns for any move they make, right?
Literally,
because if
anything
if we would have kept Sashi and Hugh going into next season, we would have been the dumbest. Jimmy Haslam would have been the dumbest, most incompetent owner in sports. But since we fired Sashi and he thinks he has his coach in Hugh or whatever, that's no matter, it's a lose. They just can't get enough of it. But so I honestly was to the point where I was laughing earlier today because rarely do you get someone rarely do you see a decision where everyone gangs up on it and is just like, this was such a bad move, the timing was terrible, everything you could imagine. But that all being said, I think I was getting ready this morning for the pod to come on tonight, and tell you that my plan for 2018 was keep everyone. We made it this far. We knew this was going to be, when everyone's saying you need to clean house again, I'm like, you know what? As a big fan, I'm okay with seeing this through the third year. I mean, we've made it this far. Can it get worse than back-to-back? Essentially 1-win seasons, maybe 2, whatever. I mean, can it get worse than a 1-15, 4-12, 4-12 season, which when we win 4 of the last 8? But I was like, why not see it out? I mean, like you said, you look at some of these draft picks and you think those will be good, backups as we add some talent.
Yeah.
We have $61 million worth of cap space, the most by, any team by probably 5 to 10 million. And then, we have 40 million more than probably 80% of the league.
Right.
So we have a lot of
over $100 million last year. So
yeah. So I was honestly, I was going to roll out 2018 and said, look, as a passionate fan, I'm happy to keep everyone intact for one more season and see the results next year. Because since day one, Jimmy has preached that this isn't going to be a 1 or 2 year deal. It's going to take at least 3 years, and next year would be year 3 to see some real progress. And so anyway, that being said, I think down the road we might look back at Sashi and I got furious with Sashi too with trades like DeMario Davis and releasing Joe Hayden, and just because I think what did we stand to lose, right, this year? Right. You know, I mean, with keeping guys like that, DeMario Davis was with letting some key veterans go. And I got frustrated with him too, with not cutting Zane Gonzalez, because I think he was pumping his chest a little bit, saying he was a draft pick, so we're going to keep him and see him out. I think just stuff like that. Kenny Britt, that bothered me. He clear missed there, but I think down the road we'll look back and say, Sashi was the fall guy for what now is a sustainably successful Browns organization, because someone had to go through this, because we constantly kept putting Band-Aids on everything. Just we would go out and spend a bunch on washed up veterans that would be half of the player they were in their prime, and Carlos Dansby, Dwayne Bowe, like you can't tell me those guys are like those were good signings either. So I think it's very similar to the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yes,
we'll look
exactly.
back on Sashi as a little bit of Sam Hinkie, and someone else will benefit from the fruits of his labor. Right. And he had an awesome, much respect to Sashi.
I loved his exit letter. It almost seems like, I just want to say this, you brought up Sam Hinkie, he should win Executive of the Year this year. Even though he's not an executive in the NBA this year, he should win it this year. So I would love to see people rumoring about, should Sashi Brown win the Executive of the Year in 2 years when, all these players that he drafted are blossoming. And it's going to be funny to see, go ahead and read some parts of his letter, but he kind of talked about that in there of how, how he would feel in a few years when the foundation was set.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just three, it's a long statement, but there's just three things that kind of stood out to me. So at the beginning he says, I want this to be real and clear. The way I know Cleveland and Browns fans can appreciate it. So I think he starts off great. And then in the middle, he just says, we made dramatic changes and put in place a foundation on which championships can be built. And I think, and he said some of these changes were very unorthodox, but we felt it was best for the long-term success of the franchise. And at the very end, he says, I thank Dee and Jimmy and all the Haslam family for taking a chance on me. And the Browns are close to a turnaround, and when that turnaround happens, wherever I am, I will smile more than a little bittersweetly and say to myself, go Browns. The first time I read it, I got chills, because I was like, he gets it.
I just got chills.
Like, he gets, because he understands. So I think a change now, I'm not as upset given the recent news we talked about earlier, but, it's I think working in the Browns organization for us, he was there, this would have been his 6th or 7th year in various roles. I think it's tough to lose a guy that has that.
Oh yeah.
I think he was outmatched for his position and put in that position probably prematurely, sure. But I think that statement says it to me, that it's like, look, I get Browns fans. We took a chance doing things very differently.
Right.
And he understands that his results to this point are not acceptable. So he's at terms with that. But anyway, I thought it was awesome going out on the high note, taking the high road. So
that has to suck for him, because he probably felt in his gut that he was like, we are because you can feel it, like we are so close.
Yeah,
so close to really turning things around and having a sustainable, group of players to choose from and put on the field and be successful. And he was like, I was literally like one draft, maybe 2 years of playing away from all these guys being so good. Because you talk to the players, and you're listening to the players and what they say, and like literally no one has lost motivation at this point in the season. And it's like, gosh, the leadership and the group of guys that are in there now, just imagine how they would feel, if they they had a successful season
with a couple wins.
Even a couple wins.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I really think, I know that people are like, I hope the Browns don't win. Even the Browns fans are like, I hope they don't win any more games because we already got the unperfect season, like, parade permit bullshit. It's like, you know what? Fuck you. Like, I hope that the players get a couple wins because that can just completely turn the momentum and roll everyone into, and I mean, God, what so it would suck for Sashi because it's like, man, if you would have just stuck around, if you would have been able to stick around, and maybe then the Haslam's would have changed their mind. But I don't know. I mean, do you think? I got this question now. Do you think that Sashi will be hired in the NFL again as a executive, or do you think he'll be going back to an attorney job?
I don't think he'll get in a personnel job again. I really don't. I think just because from what I've heard, you know, I'm not an insider by any means, but just what I've read and what I've heard is that Sashi, because they did things so differently, did not have a lot of friends, and a lot of, and it's not surprising because there's a lot of old school football guys out there that were probably determined that Sashi fail because they were doing things differently than the NFL was used to. So I think there's plenty of guys out there that are determined to spite Sashi, and I think it's very relationship based when it comes to making trade. It's just like anything. I mean,
right.
If you're gonna make a trade, there's the negotiation, there's a sale tactic to it. I mean, so if you don't have that relationship, that just makes everything that much more difficult. So I could be wrong. I just don't see anytime soon Sashi getting a personnel role in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, but I think he's sharp. I mean, obviously he's a Harvard grad with a law degree, so I think he'll be fine.
He'll be fine.
That's why I kind of just wish he could have. I know it would have been tough, but taken a reduced role. Like we could have brought in, you know, a football guy like we have, and maybe just move Sashi back to, because I do, as a person, as someone who gets the Browns fan base and gets how passionate the city is, I think he really gets it, but I think he was not qualified necessarily for the role that he was expected to execute against.
I know. There's, going back to the old school mentality, kind of, I think that happened during the McCarron trade where Hugh Jackson, he had obviously coached McCarron for a few years, and so he was in love with him and the kind of football player that he was, and I think he, turned the Haslams onto McCarron, and I don't know if DePodesta and Sashi were probably both like, we are not trading a second and a fifth round pick for this backup quarterback right now in this season. Like, this is not what you do. Yeah. And I think, the Sashi and Jackson have not been on speaking terms, for at least a month or so. So I think that definitely played a role, Sashi's handling of it, of him not, really conforming to what the coaches were, and then also coaches were wanting, and then also, as you said, he didn't relay the information correctly or whatever happened with the NFL offices, and that kind of had some blowback around the entire league as to like, well, this isn't how you handle, trades or situations where things are promised to people, or things are, McCarron was probably promised that, it's like Hugh's probably calling him saying, hey, can't wait to have you up in Cleveland. And then Sashi at the last minute is like, we're not trading a second round and a fifth round for this guy. Like, I'm sorry. And then,
Right. And for that, I'm grateful.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. When I saw what we were trying to put for McCarron, I was like, thank you, Sashi.
Right. Right. And I think most fans were that way. I think it was a knee-jerk, like, trying to pull something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And, Yeah, so I'm happy if he sabotaged it. It might have cost him his job, but that just tells you that he was true to course and true to the process.
Right.
The process.
I know. I was talking to a guy at work today who's been he's been a lifelong Browns fan, lived through, he's been a fan for 50 years, and he was talking about how he's like, we need to get that baseball guy out of the Browns. And I was just like, I just was screaming in my head, just like, all the 76ers fans did scream or are screaming now, just like, trust the process. Like,
yeah.
He was, the Browns used to be like, this is how everything happens to them. And I was just like, you just gotta trust the process. Let things work out. Like, okay, I don't even care if we don't win. Okay, I kind of do, but say we didn't win a game for 5 years, but we just like constantly building this base of talent that would eventually win championships. It's like sometimes you just have to, it seems like the Browns have been tanking for, the greater part of like 12, 15 years, but I think it's finally like right on the upswing. And I just don't want to see any of these older fans, yell about the Browns anymore. I'm tired of it.
Yeah. So good luck to Sashi.
Yeah.
I think down the road we'll look back and say, what he did the last 2 years was necessary, and someone had to be the fall guy, and it was either going to be him or Hugh Jackson.
Yeah.
And,
well,
I don't necessarily blame Jimmy, because I think Hugh Jackson at the time was a big get, because no one thought that he would want to come and coach in Cleveland, and the players are still playing for him hard. And trust me, Hugh has questions of his own.
Right.
Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I think overall, I would have, if I had to choose one, I would have kept Hugh too. But and that's based solely off the fact that the players love playing for him. That nothing else, because he's made. I don't love his press conferences. I don't love how he kind of beats around the bush. He just contradicts himself. I think he's clearly a first-time head coach, but legitimate head coach, not interim head coach. Yeah. But I'm excited. This new guy, I don't know if you've heard about him, but he's had some success. So
yeah,
who knows?
So before we move on, we just want to. Thank you, Sashi. You brought Myles Garrett here. You brought
David Njoku.
Not Julius, but Jabril Peppers. All those guys we listed from the 2016 draft, minus Carson Wentz, were seriously great picks. And like I said, and you kind of said this too, but in 3 or 4 years when, Myles Garrett really starts getting into his, because we're watching him now as one of the best defenders, pass rushers, in the NFL, are almost going to be in the NFL. And it's like, this is his rookie season. It's sometimes hard to forget that this is his rookie season. So in 3 and 4 years, when those guys are really blossoming and ready to not sign their veteran contracts with the Browns, we just want to say thank you that we'll be able to watch those because of you. But Browns do have.
So he'll be the 2022 executive of the year in the NFL. So we'll keep an eye on that when we're winning the Super Bowl. So that all being said, who's this new guy? What do you know about him?
He played in the NFL, so I know that about him.
Ooh.
His name is John Dorsey. John Dorsey. John Dorsey. He came over from the Chiefs. Some pros about him. He took Aaron Rodgers. I know that he was part of the Packers staff that took Aaron Rodgers. He wasn't I don't think he was the GM at the time. He did Aaron Rodgers. You look at, some of the articles, obviously they're local based, so they're saying, look at the Cleveland natives that this guy got that the Browns completely whiffed on. Look at what he's done with the Chiefs. He took Travis Kelce, who is a Cleveland Heights native. So is Jason Kelsey, who is a great lineman for the Eagles. And he also took, Kareem Hunt, who was from Willoughby Hills, or Willoughby South, I believe. So both Cleveland natives that the Browns had to, because I think Kelsey was a late first rounder and Kareem was a third rounder. So, obviously some of the articles I saw were about those guys. I mean, the Chiefs, they have had he has done really good with some of those draft picks, but he also has not done well with veteran players. I don't know if you read any of this about him, but he likes to give 3 and 4 year contracts to, say, like mid-30s linebackers, and tends to side more on building veterans than really building a young team. So I know the Browns recently.
Really?
Yeah. So the Browns have the youngest team. They had the youngest team in the NFL last year. They have the youngest team in the NFL this year. And just because of all their draft picks, they're going to have the youngest team in the NFL the next year. So he's more on the side of, let's sign Jamie Collins to, I don't know how old Jamie Collins is now. I don't even know if he's 30 yet, but, he signed 2 of Kansas City's linebackers, who one was 32, one was 33, to 3-year deals, and for big money too. And it's just, he sides a lot with the veterans, and I'm kind of scared about that because the Browns have really tried to build off of their youth and, really just trust in those guys to eventually become the talent that they are. So I don't know if I really gave an answer to whatever your question was, but
I asked who this new guy is. So I don't know. No, I think it's going to be like a change in dynamic as a fan too, because at least the last 2 years, we've been preached to how we're going to build it through the draft and build it the right way. So I don't know how I'm going to react to signing anyone to a free agent deal over the age of 30.
Yeah.
So it will be, and at some point you might question some of those signings. Like, hey, is $9 million a year too much for Joe Hayden? That's what the Steelers paid him.
Right.
So would you, or $7 million a year, maybe it was? How are you going to feel about moves like that? But I think, just looking at his track record in Green Bay, and I mean, Green Bay rarely spends big money on free agents.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think he has a good blend of both. I think he realizes the importance of the quarterback position, because the first thing he did when he was with the Chiefs is he went out and traded for Alex Smith, and Alex Smith, he's been serviceable at very least.
Yeah.
He's been
through week 6 this year. He was great, and then
yeah, he's been average to better than average since he's been with the Chiefs. And then this year he made the big move to come up and get Patrick Mahomes. So I think he realizes there's a huge emphasis on the quarterback, and I mean that's something, for whatever reason,
Kirk
we've
Cousins.
been avoiding. Oh my gosh, I would be. We'll talk about 2018. Kirk Cousins was part of my rollout for 2018.
Plan.
Yeah, but
we'll get into that after they win the last 4.
Yeah, because I mean, everyone has us pegged for taking a quarterback number 1 overall, but when we win these last 8,
we're not going to have the number 1 overall pick. So.
Yeah, we're going to have the 2 or 3 pick, so
right. Maybe
even the 4th. So yeah, we won't get into the quarterback at number 1 discussion, but like I said, I'm excited because I think it was a move. It doesn't sound like analytics is completely being wiped from the Browns' strategy.
Right.
I think that there needs to be a complement of both, and I think at what was the final, or what was why this didn't work, is because you had Hugh Jackson, the coaching staff, wanting it to be 100% traditional, football,
Yeah.
and you had the Sashi team wanting it to be 100% analytics driven and saving money and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of pounding of fists on the forehead.
Right,
that,
exactly. And there was no cohesion or compromise in between there, where it's like everyone always felt like someone was losing, whereas it couldn't be like, hey, why don't we keep DeMario Davis for the $2 million he's on the books for this year, and okay, we can deal with you releasing Joe. But so I think that I hope they don't turn away solely from the analytics, and I think every NFL team is. I think analytics is like this overblown like word that people like to throw out to think that it's just spreadsheets that tell you what player to pick. Like it's not.
Right.
It's not. It's not that.
It's way more
simple.
Than that. It's way more than that.
So.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm excited just based off his track record, and he seems to have been one of the hottest commodities going into the off season. So that makes kind of the timing right.
Yeah, and I guess
get it done. Why wait?
Right, and that the Browns had been in talks with him or interviewing him or whatever you want to say for probably 5 or 6 weeks before this actually happened, and I was reading an article about what he did because he got let go last year, so he wasn't a GM for anyone this year until now. But what he did was on Monday and Tuesday he watched professional NFL game tape, and I say professional as in like the actual game tape of all those games, and then just on from Wednesday, so that was Monday, Tuesday, watched every game, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, he was watching college players getting ready to draft and pick personnel for whatever team that he was going to be hired for. So I really do think that this is actually the perfect timing to bring. All right, we're back recording now. We ran into some strange technical difficulties, Wi-Fi, computer restarts, first world problems, I guess. But
there's too many people on the line.
Yes, too many interweb monsters and whatever you want to call them. So yeah, Browns have a new GM now, and let's just get right into win number 1 of 4. I guess that's your words, not mine, but Browns take on the Packers this week. They're 3.5 point underdogs. Let's just wrap this up real quick. Who's your player to watch this week, or players to watch?
Yeah, I am gonna watch my man Myles Garrett, because I think honestly, when you watch him play last week, I think on 50% of the plays that he's a step away from getting a sack or getting a tackle for loss.
Right.
With a rookie quarterback in there, I want to see him have a big day and, maybe have 1 or 2 sacks. I think he's at, what is he at, 6?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think he's at 6, so I would love to see him get up to 8.5 sacks by the end of the year, and getting 1 or 2 this weekend would be a great start to that. So I'm going to be watching him, and I hope that Brian Body Calhoun, he's a player who I think all year has been playing, has quietly had a really good year. So I hope that he's a mainstay. And God, like you said, Bill, this is win 1 of 4. I think Hugh Jackson is fired up that he doesn't have to deal with the conflicts that he's dealt with in the past and the butting heads with Sashi. I think he's fired up for this game. I think this is when we bring home the first W.
Oh yeah,
because I think the Packers, we match up very similarly to the Packers. So, but we'll see.
We really do. And not to boil your bubble, it looks like he only has 5 sacks on the year.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
only 5.
Didn't get credited with one any last week. So, but 3.5. The only hitch in getting 2 sacks against Green Bay is Brett Hundley does run a lot of like read option stuff. So, it may appear that it was a sack, but it could get credited as just a tackle for loss if the NFL considers it a run play.
Yeah,
but,
that's a good.
My player to watch kind of reflects on that is Kirksey. He talked a lot about this week about defending the run option, and he mentioned that the Browns had already kind of done that when they played. I think Jacoby Brissett ran a few run option reads.
Well, and Deshaun Watson, right?
Yeah, Deshaun Watson. Yep, definitely. He was really good. But I don't think Houston ran too many really read options. I think Hundley does a lot more like college-esque read options than Deshaun Watson did. But, you look at Cincinnati, actually they run a lot of it's more of I would say with Dalton's skill set as a runner, it's more of a play action read with a run option. So they definitely have played that, but I'm interested in seeing how well Kirksey and the linebackers defend, the read option. I think the Packers had 94 yards rushing last week, so it'd be good to see the Browns. I think I don't know what they are. I'm one of those people that I don't look at the normal yard stats. I only look at what the Football Outsiders DVOA shows. And, they show that the Browns are, I think, number 1 in rush defense. So I just really hope that they can hold that up all year. And I think this game will really be a good.
Yeah, I think if you limit the running game and make Brett Hundley beat you with his arm, I think you stand a really good chance to have a shot in the game. I mean, I don't know that. I was just reading today that 2 of the top. Well, actually, there's potential that 3 of the top corners for Green Bay may be out. A couple of them missed their second practice today. So if that does happen, then hopefully Kizer has a big day. And God, wouldn't it be great to just go out there and score 30, 35
points? Oh my gosh.
Win and just, end the week. We have some positive vibes now. It's with a new GM. So who seems like he's pretty competent and has had some success. So yeah, I got him, Bill. I got him by 10.
10.
I got him by 10.
At home at 10. Hugh Jackson was saying this week that he tells his defense that if they can hold the other team to around, 16 or 17 points, then the Browns should be able to put up, 20, 24 or something like that. That's just really never happened this week. There's always a mistake. Earlier in the season it was, I think we played a tougher schedule earlier in the season, so it was more mistakes that, not mistakes, but I think just the team being better. But these last few weeks have felt like it's really boiled down to Browns' mistakes during the worst times and worst situations that have really, really cost them the game. So, perfect. You got the Browns taking their W. I mean, you almost have to, but you don't have to, go with your 4 of the last 8. But I love that you're going with the Browns by 10. My player, I got another player to watch other than Kirksey, and that is, it's the relationship between Kizer and Gordon. I want to continue to see that grow because, these guys can get as many, they can throw awesome 50-yard bombs in practice and run their, route trees in practice, and Kizer hits Gordon for every one, but, him being able to learn what Gordon's game speed is and where he wants the ball. And that was one thing I listened to, a lot of Kizer's press conferences this week. And one thing I didn't really know that well was how on deep balls, where, Kizer has to be able to put it where Josh Gordon wants to go up and make a play for it. Does he want a back shoulder throw? Does he want to put on that second gear and outrun the coverage? So I think having a game where Kizer was able to give, they didn't connect on any of them, but he was able to give Gordon some Gordon was able to give Kizer some looks into, his deep route running, I think that can really help us, and help their relationship moving forward. So that's definitely something to watch.
Interesting. Sorry, just real quick about John Gordon. Given the 3 years of the suspension, he's under contract through next year.
Right.
And then for the 2018 season, he can only be a restricted free agent.
Yes.
So it's pretty crazy that after all this, if he keeps it together and, I think we'll have a pretty clear picture of his commitment by the end of the season. I mean, if he has a game like he did this past game and he's hyped up and motivated on an 0-12 team or 0-11 team, then just think if next year we make some changes, get a quarterback who can get him the ball and add some pieces around him, I think that could bode really well.
Yeah, and like you said, the Packers secondary is banged up, and I don't know if I don't necessarily see Gordon getting to. I mean, it'd be great if he got to 100 yards, but I would rather see Kizer spread the ball around more and get more guys involved and just use Gordon because he seemed like he was. I don't know if he targeted Gordon more last week just to try and get more familiar with how he should throw it to Gordon, or if he really thought Gordon was open on those plays. Some of them he was, but it'd be really interesting to see Kizer use Gordon to be able to open up the rest of the receivers, and really just open up that offense because our run offense is statistically very good. It's just the passing offense that really, has to hamper down and especially produce when they're in the red zone. I mean, we can't have any more of these red zone or turnovers or anything like that. It just completely kills what we're driving towards. So I've got, the Kizer Josh Gordon relationship and Kirksey on defense. I feel shaky about, I don't know if shaky's the right word, but I feel, maybe 60% confident in year 4 of the last 8 right now. But I do feel I'm very confident that the Browns are going to win this game. The Packers are favored by 3.5 points, but I think the Browns win by a touchdown. I think I'm calling it a touchdown. Maybe like a kind of a high scoring. Well, no, yeah, like 27-20.
Yep, I was going to say 24. That's my call. Zane Gonzalez misses a field goal per usual. So it should have been 27. It
should have been, yeah.
So, or he'll miss one and it'll be 21-14, and I would have called the score perfectly had he not it in.
Or it'll be a Browns 1-point loss and he missed an extra point early in the game.
Yep. So not ruling that out.
No, but I mean we've got for all the trouble that the Browns have seemed to have gotten themselves in this season with the losing record and the media backfires to Deshaun Watson and Sashi Brown and all the hate that we've gotten. I think me and you see it pretty clearly that the future is bright. But we do really, really want to see the Browns get some W's because those guys deserve it. I mean, you listen to them every week and they prepare to give Browns fans the best every single week, and they just do deserve some W's. So
I agree.
All right. Well, Here We Go Cleveland podcast hosts, we need to buy our tickets to the Baltimore Ravens game. I think we said this in an earlier pod, but it's probably been over a month now. But if any of our fans, I guess, fans other than friends want to come out to the Baltimore Ravens game, we will be semi-tailgating before that game for next week on December 17th. So buy your $6 tickets and come and have a good time. There may be some free apparel.
We'll be going for our 2-game win streak at that point.
Yes.
En route to a 4-game win streak.
We'll be busting up. If the Browns win this week, it could completely bust up the the NFC playoff race.
Yeah.
Because everyone's kind of thinking, like, well, if Green Bay wins this week and then they can get Aaron Rodgers back, he said he would only play if they would be in contention for a playoff spot. So, I love Aaron Rodgers, but I would love to see the Browns, dash Green Bay's playoff hopes. So
yeah, I agree. They've had their run.
They really have.
They do.
Yes, so. Definitely. All right, let's go out and let's beat Brett Hundley's ass.
Yeah.
Let's
till next week. Hopefully, we have a different rendition of exciting news to discuss next week, and that's a one-game win. So let's keep our fingers crossed, say a little prayer, and see what happens.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. We may have to do like a surprise Sunday early reaction pod if they win. It may be that.
Let's not get too.
There's no promises. Yeah. But
so let's do first. Win, baby, win.
Let's go get that W for Sashi. All right. That was Here We Go Cleveland podcast. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back next week with more Browns excitement. Woo!
Signing off.
Sashing off.